Another thing that maximizes a student's learning is feedback. And the more clear the feedback is, the better the learner's performance will be. Ambiguity, meaning like lack of clarity, right, really makes learning very difficult. Okay, why? Because if I don't know if you ever encountered a situation, but if you encountered a situation with a teacher where they're not very clear about what you got right and what you got wrong, it's hard for you to improve on whatever it is that you did. Here it is again, clarity, being clear, okay? So using this example, okay, let's say that you're still a student in school, okay, and your teacher assigns you a paper that you have to write, okay? Well, on being clear with the instructions, if he just tells you you have to write a paper this semester, this quarter, but he doesn't give you any specifics about how long that paper has to be, how many references that you need to have, when you need to turn it in, it's going to make your life much more difficult. Versus a teacher that is very, very clear about what is expected of you, okay? Oh, I want a 10-page paper citing at least 10 references, utilizing this, utilizing that, being very, very specific about what they want from you. And if their instructions to you include their expectations in terms of, oh, I expect this paper to tell me the differences between this or this, or I want you to argue this. And they're very, very clear about what the purpose of that paper is and how they want you to fulfill that purpose, the more likely you are to succeed in that class. In terms of the clarity of the feedback, if you turn in a paper and the professor gives you back the paper, but there's only a letter grade associated with it, there's nothing else that indicates what you did well, what you didn't do well on, the next time this same professor is going to have you write a paper, you could do the same, you could do better, or you could do worse. And it's really up to chance because you don't know exactly what got you that grade and what you can possibly do to improve upon that. The more clear and the more specific of the feedback that the professor can give you helps your performance for future papers. So if the professor actually took the time to go paragraph by paragraph and identified what you did well as what areas were weak, it allows you a better opportunity to earn a better grade the next time because that feedback was very, very clear and precise. The thing is that, and this is something that I don't know very many people really understand, is feedback is slightly different than reinforcement and punishment. Okay, so they can be the same, but a lot of times they're not. Because like a lot of times people believe like, oh, you know what, reinforce this child, and they say good job. Okay? Well, if this child doesn't understand language and they don't know what good job means and they have no association with them, saying good job is not going to necessarily reinforce the response. Why? Because those are just words. And unless there's some value attached to those words, it just ends up being feedback, but not reinforcement. And if the child's doing something wrong, the other thing applies that, oh, even though I did it wrong, the feedback might not be a punisher. Okay. And so that's what you want to understand is like, oh, when we're talking about it, feedback is a little bit different, but to be a very good teacher, you should tie those things together. All right. So now that we've established that feedback and clear feedback is important, well, the thing is that some people don't understand when they're sending mixed messages with the feedback that they give the child. Okay. And so the problem is this lack of clear feedback sends this very mixed message. Okay. And so you want to be very good about the feedback that you give. Be very precise and clear. Mixed messages can come in a variety of forms. Oh, good. And then you're giving the child a lot of reinforcement. Okay, like, oh, you're throwing them up in the air and things like that. Okay, or you're like, no, but then you're touching the child, you're doing something with the child, and it sends different messages to the child. And that's what you want to avoid, is that there's one message and it's a very, very clear message. Feedback that you give to the child needs to be exact and to the point, meaning like, oh, the child shouldn't have to filter through a lot of noise. They shouldn't have like blah blah blah, hey Jimmy, blah 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 blah, and they have to figure out, okay, what exactly, be precise. This is what you did right. This is what you need to improve on. Be very, very clear. So on the reinforcement side, remember, we want to tie the feedback to the reinforcement. Well, what we mean by that is like if the child's performing, like, oh, I'm building this Lego, but this is the same thing that I've been doing for a long time. It's okay to give low levels of reinforcement because this is something that is easy for them. If the task was really well done compared to how he was does, then you would give mass amounts of reinforcement. But if this is fairly typical, the amount of reinforcement should match their performance. You're matching the reinforcement to how well they did the task that you asked them to do. You're also matching it to how much work they put into it, so that we are reinforcing and we're providing the level of reinforcement that is an exact match for how hard this task is, how much energy they put into the task. So that if they put low levels of energy, we're giving low levels of reinforcement. However, if they do a really hard task and they do something they have never done before, that's when you give them the highest level of reinforcement possible. Whatever it is that they love, you're going to supply them with it. And it's all about this matching. Matching the feedback and the reinforcement to the child's performance. For sure, anything that the child does fantastic, like, oh, you've never seen the child do it before, oh, they put a lot of energy, you have to make sure you're providing them with reinforcers that they love to promote that responding. On the other side, when the child does something wrong, okay, like, oh, you ask them to do something, they didn't do it to your expectations, they didn't do it to your level of satisfaction, you tell them no. And because they failed, the very next time, all right, you're going to ask them to do the same thing, but then you have to make sure you give them the help that they need to be successful. So, this is something that we've encountered quite often. And it's funny because service providers will do the same thing, which is that, you know what? My child really doesn't like it when I tell them no. They'll protest, they really hate it, And how I usually respond is, I'm sorry, they're going to have to get used to it. Okay. And why? Because this world, you cannot avoid no's. Okay. You step out the door, there's a lot of people ready to tell you no. And if you're so hypersensitive to it, you're not going to do well in this world. Okay. So that even if your child is sensitive to it, they learn how to adapt to it. You want to make sure that you're very good about giving specific and clear feedback to your child so that their performance improves as a byproduct of that feedback. Right. Again, all these images came from Pixabay, so thanks all everybody for making those images available. Sorry about today, the length of today's, but I really wanted to get all of that stuff in there because I think this is the most important part of teaching, is having these concepts when you're actually teaching your child. And it's always about the clarity. Thanks everybody for bearing with us. This stream went well over the time. So, thank you for kind of hanging in there with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you again for joining us. If you like what we do, please hit the like button. If you really enjoy our talks, please subscribe. And any kind of feedback, please leave to us. We read everything and we're trying to improve. We'll see everybody next time. Bye-bye.